I call this segment "Getting to Know the Author" because I was Googling you. I was like, oh, I got to get ready. I got to get to know him. And the only Robert Barclay really out there right now online. We were joking a little earlier. The Scottish Quaker from the 17th century.
Right? I know. I should have Googled him first, but I know when I look for references to the book online, it's all about the Robert Barclay from the Quakers. Barclay was just the name that I chose, and it happened to be another famous writer. So there you are. It is what it is.
Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Maybe a condensed bio.
Well, I was born in upstate New York. I lived in a very small town of 700. My family was in the auto business. My graduating class in high school had 38 kids in it.
Oh, a booming metropolis.
Oh, yes. And I went to Colgate University, studied abroad for a time. I was pre-law, took the LSATs, was ready to go, and just decided I'd done enough homework. And I went into the family business. Bought the business from my father in the 90s. We decided to sell the business. It was a good, lucrative thing to do at the time. Moved to Florida, and my wife said, "You always want to write a book, so write a book." And this was the result.
That's absolutely. I love the idea of kind of the moving to Florida. I mean, that's the dream, right? Moving to Florida and getting it right.
And please understand, I don't mean to make it sound like, well, I just wrote this book and it sold and it was so easy. It wasn't. It's not. It's a process and it's very difficult. You know, but I've been blessed, and I'm very happy to have the agent that I have and the publisher that I have.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the process of writing, because I know when I do speak with authors, they talk about maybe, obviously we've got all the pluses. You get to go and meet fans and share your emotions and your words with everyone. But on the other side, there's a flip to that where there's a lot of hours sitting alone in front of a computer, trying to draw things out of yourself.
If you're somebody who has a vast need to be social, I wouldn't recommend this occupation. I work generally from about 11 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. I can do about 5 pages in that time. So Monday through Friday, that's 25 pages a week. That's about 100 pages a month, which I've been told is relatively fast. I'm just lucky in that regard. I guess I broke some of the rules when I wrote this book because later it became my understanding that you're supposed to use an outline and you're supposed to read everything you can find about the genre, and I don't use an outline. I don't want to be hemmed in. I want to come to the computer keyboard every day wondering what's going to happen rather than knowing what's going to happen. And what I do very simply is I take a legal pad, I'll write down chapter 17, a one-sentence description of the chapter, and the good old-fashioned who, what, where, why, and how. And by the time I fill those in, I've got enough to start myself going. And as the chapter progresses, more and more starts to filter in and ends up on the printed page. So I'm very fortunate. I've never had writer's block. And this wasn't a book that my editor had to tear apart at the seams. So I was very happy about that. And it was just a fun experience. I enjoyed it very much.
Well, If Wishes Were Horses is a fabulous, I would call it a mainstream, but there's definitely people that are also interested in just general fiction and also interested, there's definitely, we talked earlier about the inspirational moments in there too.
Right.
So I think you have cast quite a large net with a lot of people being very interested.
Well, we hope so.
Yeah, in
we
the story.
So.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you're working on next?
I'm working on a book that HarperCollins has just bought from me. I'm about 150 pages in. The working title is called More Than Words Can Say.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's about, thank you. I'll tell you why in a minute. It's about a young woman in her 30s who's a school teacher in Syracuse. She comes from a very privileged family by Syracuse standards. And her grandmother was very wealthy, and she loved her grandmother dearly, and her grandmother passes away. And before the funeral, the woman is named Shelley. She's summoned to the family attorney, and he gives her a letter from her grandmother that was written on the day of her birth, of Shelley's birth. And there's a little silver key in the letter. And the grandmother tells her that Shelley has inherited the lakefront cottage in the Adirondacks that the grandmother used to own. It's been closed up since 1944. And the key will open a tin box that's hidden under the floorboards. And the grandmother says, I know I'll love you to pieces as you grow up and do with the cottage what you will, but if you decide to sell it, you must look in the tin box and you must examine what's there before you decide. And when you get there, you'll understand. And she gets there, and she meets a man in the neighboring cottage, and they start to come to know each other. And inside the tin box is her grandmother's journal from the summer of 1944 during World War II, and a series of photographs with her grandmother and a man who's not her grandfather. So she begins to wonder. And as the story progresses, she and the man in the cabin next door agree to read an excerpt from her grandmother's journal, one to another each night. And so as their story progresses, the story of her grandmother's situation with this other man 60 years ago also progresses. And I'm enjoying this one.
So we get dueling relationships.
We do. It bounces back and forth between the 40s and current day. So there's a nice juxtaposition of cultures there, even though it's basically all one family. And I think this one will work.
Wow, it sounds fantastic.
Thank
well,
you.
thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
talking with me today. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
I appreciate the chance.